Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar tracking sales targets and quota in Salesforce. I tend to use the term target and quota fairly interchangeably. Being a European, I tend to refer to targets, but if I mention quotas, exactly the same thing, so we'll use the terms fairly interchangeably. I'm your host. I'm Gary Smith. That's me on the left-hand side, and I'm delighted to say that my right-hand man, Ben Affleck Curry, is hopefully here. Ben, can you hear me?
I am here. I can hear you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you've had a good Wednesday so far. I'm going to be here basically just to manage the questions and just make sure the webinar goes smoothly. So if anyone has anything to ask, you can use the questions tab in your Go to Webinar panel. So just feel free to ask away there and we'll do our best to get everything answered for you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. Well, it seems a timely point to be running this webinar. A lot of people looking at how they set up targets and setting targets right for 2018. So it's a good time, it seems, to be running this webinar. But what at all, really? Well, you know, I think there's two key reasons. This whole subject, historic sales performance against target, is absolutely fundamental to how you manage a sales team or a salesperson. We all want to know how we did against historic targets at the team, person, company level. But I think it's much more than that. We also need to know, as sales managers, we need to know whether we have a pipeline to meet both a current target and future targets. And it seems to me that this is crucial because we're in early January 2018 now. If you have enough pipeline in January to meet your January target, then it drives your sales management. It determines the way that you drive the sales team in a certain direction. For example, you can focus primarily on closing the deals that you already have, whereas have enough pipeline for January or even for Q1, then you've got a different problem. You have to close the deals that you already have, but then there's a focus short-term pipeline, generating short-term pipeline, whether that's from existing customers, because you have a double problem. One is you don't have enough deals, and secondly, you've got to close the deals that you already have. Whereas if you can measure the pipeline against target for January or target for next month or the target for Q1, then you can still focus on pipeline activity, but it's longer term pipeline and probably more organized and probably more efficient as well. So those first two reasons on the chart have all we need to track historic performance against target, but we want to track the pipeline against target. And the third reason really is one that comes to the fore, I think, at this time of year when people are creating targets. I've met some people who spent an inordinate amount of time searching for the target tab in Salesforce. And if you're doing that right now, let me tell you, the target tab does not exist in Salesforce. However, there are ways to measure performance against target in Salesforce, 3 ways in fact, and I'm going to show you each of those ways now. So what we're going to cover are the 3 different ways of measuring target against measuring performance against target in Salesforce: the gauge, the forecast, and the target app. We'll also spend a little bit of time just talking about how to drive the benefit home, drive the impact home, really use target tracking to maximize the effectiveness of management and of salespeople in their performance. So really the 3 things that I want you to take away, that I hope you'll take away from this webinar, is an understanding of the 3 ways of tracking targets and quota in Salesforce, an understanding of the extent to which each of those ways allows you to track pipeline and future targets. And the third takeaway really is an understanding of how to use each of those methods on reports and dashboards and to really drive home the benefit. So Without further ado, excuse me. Without further ado, let's go over to Salesforce, and we will let's go through the first of those, the gauge method. I'm going to show you. I'm going to focus. I'm going to focus primarily on using the Classic edition for the simple reason that the majority of our customers are still using the Classic dashboards and Classic interfaces, but everything I show you works equally well in Classic or Lightning. It's just a slightly different interface, but apart from that, everything is the same. So this is an example of how to track targets using a gauge, and we can see on the left-hand side here we are comparing deals won this month, i.e. in January at the moment, with the target, and it's a pretty self-explanatory visual aid. We can see we've won $124,000 worth of business against a target of $150,000. So in terms of anyone's ability to understand that, it's pretty intuitive. If I go over to the right-hand side of the chart, look at the right-hand dashboard, then we're tracking the performance this quarter against the target, and that's the same 124 because we're in the first month in January against a target of 400,000. So as a way of just giving a fairly simple measure of how much business you've won against a target, it's a pretty effective and low cost and an easy way to do it. Few issues with it. One is, well, these two charts don't really tell us anything about the pipeline. These are closed won deals against a target. Do we have enough pipeline to meet the target for the next month? So this chart is running on closed won deals. This chart is running on purely on the pipeline, and we can see that against a target of 500,000, we have pipeline deals of 536,000. So you can track the pipeline to a certain extent, but just as a simple tool, it can be quite effective. If I go to the underlying report there, you see it's just a straightforward report on closed won deals. Part of the issue is that doesn't tell us anything about the target itself. So we have to rely on the gauge on the dashboard to understand that. That's the deals that we've won in January, and we can start to analyze that, but it doesn't really tell us anything about the pipeline, doesn't tell us anything about the actual target figure. Nevertheless, if you need to set up a way of tracking targets in the next hour or this afternoon, this is a good way to do it. Just create the underlying report and use the dashboard gauge to track the figures. So a few notes on the pros and cons of using the gauge method. It is easy to set up. It's easy to understand. I dare say quite a few people on this webinar or probably most people on the webinar either could do it themselves or they've got somebody fairly well to hand in their company who can set that up. It's a report and it's a dashboard gauge, and it's quick and it's easy to understand. On the other hand, it's a blunt instrument in the sense that that first gauge, for example, showing closed won this month, it just tells us how much we've won this month. It doesn't really tell us anything else beyond that piece of information. And the other downside is that if you want to have a separate target image, separate gauge, a separate graphic for each individual salesperson, or indeed if you've got a lot of different teams, you are going to end up with a lot of gauges. So you'd have one gauge for each person, or a gauge at the company level, a gauge at the team level, and a gauge for each individual person. So you can very quickly get kind of swamped. But for many businesses, it's going to work. Bear in mind that if your targets vary from one month to the next, then you're going to have to recalibrate the red, amber, and green for each time period of each month or each quarter, depending on how often your targets change as well. So you're going to need to do that. But in itself, it's quite an effective way, simple but effective way of tracking target. Oops. So any questions on that, Ben, at all, or everybody happy with that?
We did have a couple of questions actually on the gauge method. The first question, someone asked, can you include the targets in the underlying report?
You can't, and that's one of the downsides of it. You can with the other methods that I'm going to come to now, but part of the issue is that it's just a report. It's just a report of closed won deals. It's simply a report, and you can see actually I've got a chart in the report itself, and then on the dashboard I'm using a gauge component to track the targets. So no, you can't do that, and that's one of the downsides.
Okay, and we also had one other question. Someone was interested in knowing how to edit the red, amber, and green sayings within each gauge.
Oh, okay, simple. You actually you actually edit the dashboard. So go to the dashboard, click on edit, same thing in Lightning, same principle in Lightning. And if you there's my 3 gauges, and if I click on the little spanner, there are the parameters that I can set. So we can just change that one. And that will update your dashboard.
Okay, so nice and simple.
Okay, so let's go into the. Okay, Ben. Thanks. So let's go on to the second method. I mentioned that the targets tab doesn't exist in Salesforce. The equivalent of the targets tab is this tab here, the forecast tab. Now, the forecast tab is potentially quite a sophisticated way of measuring performance against target. So in this case here, we're looking at Dave's forecast. We can see that over the 6 month, he's got a quota, uses the word quota rather than target, but that's fine, has a quota of $300,000, and we can see that spread out over 5-6 months there. We can also see how his opportunities compare with that quota figure. So let's have a look at January, for example. He's won $18,000 of business against that 50,000. He's got a commit figure of $35,500. Now, where does that come from? It comes from 2 places. It's the sum of what Dave has already won plus the deals that he has categorized as commit. So don't worry, Gary, I'm definitely going to bring this deal in. So the commit is the sum of this commit value, is the sum of the commit category and the closed one. So don't worry, Gary, I'm definitely bringing in 35.5. His best case are additional pipeline deals that Dave has said, yeah, with a following wind and a bit of luck, I might bring in some additional deals. So that 45 includes the 35, the 35 includes the 18 and so on. So we can see how the figures roll up. And his total pipeline shows all of the figures put together. Anything that's in the pipeline, but bear in mind it's got a close date of January. Dave's either marked it as a best case or a commit. Now, the opportunities that make up those numbers are here below. If I go to February, you'll see a different set of opportunities. And the way that Dave will update these figures is, I go to an opportunity. It's using this field here, the forecast category, and Dave can say, well, actually, this forecast, this one, I'm going to put into, it might still be in qualification, but for whatever reason, because I know what's happening with this one, yeah, you can rely on that one, and we'll put it into commit, for example. So when we go back to the forecast tab, sometimes takes a couple of minutes just to update, but if we refresh that, then you'll see that in a few moments that figure will update. So Dave can go through and manage his individual opportunities. If you are a manager, so if you're Dave's manager, you can go and manually edit these figures. So if you always know that Dave is always a little bit optimistic, he's always got his happy ears on, then you can go and downgrade that forecast, that commit figure, for example, if you feel a little bit uncomfortable about that as a manager. You can also, based on the stage fields, predefine where these opportunities, which forecast category they fall into. So it's quite flexible. You can use you can set targets by product family. You can use different figures, margin figures, etc. You can certainly use a dashboard to represent the information as well. So we can display all of this same information on dashboards. There is a bit of a but though. It's probably the most complex thing a salesperson is likely to have to do. You can't really use the forecast tab as a manager without some training, and I would say for most salespeople do need some training on how to use the forecast tab. I've been deploying Salesforce since 2003, and I could probably count on the fingers of, I'll probably need both hands, but I can count on the fingers of both hands how many times I've actually deployed the forecast tab. If I'm honest, I probably wouldn't need the fingers of that many fingers to count the number of times I've deployed it successfully. It's a complicated piece of functionality to use and to set up. So for example, these quota figures have to be imported via the data loader, which is a bit of a faffing about as well. But nevertheless, quite a sophisticated piece of functionality. And what I think are the key pros and cons of that, it's quite flexible. You can set targets at individual team, you can roll them up to the dashboards and so on. You can see the performance of you can see the sales pipeline in terms of different forecast categories, best case, commit, pipeline, and so on. Managers have a bit of flexibility to override forecasts of subordinates. On the downside, yeah, it's quite convoluted to set up. It's not desperately intuitive in terms of the setup process. I do think you need training. You need narrative training to really understand it, and salespeople have to go through that manual process of actually going through their opportunities and deciding which forecast category they are in. So the companies where I've seen it work very effectively, it does drive a high level of user adoption, providing as managers you are managing by that forecast tab. If you want to speak to a company that uses the forecast tab very effectively, go and talk to Salesforce, because they use it more than any other company I know. They use it better than any other company I know. Go and speak to your account manager and get him or her to show you how they use the forecast tab. So that's the standard way in Salesforce of tracking performance against target. There is a third way. Any questions on that, Ben? Are we okay?
We're okay for this one. Yeah, no questions.
Okay. So there's a third way of tracking sales performance against target, and that's to build a custom solution. We have a solution that's called the GSP target tracker. Let me show you how that works. So you can either take a solution from us, or there are other people, or you can build it yourself. But let me show you conceptually how it works and what you need it to do. So let's look at Dave's target for January. So every salesperson has a target for each month of the year. So this is Dave's target for January 2018. And we can see that he has a target of $50,000. Now, we already know, in fact, that Dave has won $18,000 worth of business in January. And he has a total pipeline of just under $70,000, so $69,500. Now, the weighted value of that pipeline is $21,700. So his total expected revenue, this figure here is $39,700. And that's the sum of what he's already won and the weighted value of his pipeline. And where are those numbers coming from? Well, if I just scroll down a bit, you can see here on the screen, these are the opportunities that make up those numbers. So what's happening is that in the background, what's happening is for each opportunity, what the app does is says, well, okay, this opportunity is owned by Dave. What's the close date? The close date is on in January. That's a UK number format for the North American visitors. But the date is all January. It's owned by Dave. So go link this opportunity to Dave's January target, and we can see some of the numbers to do with those opportunities there. So what's happening is that those numbers are automatically rolling up. There's nothing for the salesperson to do. These numbers are automatically rolling up. Now, why do we include the weighted pipeline? Well, you can see over on the right-hand side that Dave's already achieved 36% of his target. That's the $18,000 there. His total pipeline is 139% of his target. However, I think we all know that Dave is not going to win 100% of that pipeline. So using the weighted pipeline gives us some indication of, a lot of the things being equal, well, how does the weighted pipeline compare with his target? And we know that the weighted pipeline is 43%. So his expected achievement is 79% of his target. And in fact, we can see that depicted in the diagram, in this diagram on the left-hand side below. This is Dave's target for the month. This is what he's already won. That's just some of his weighted pipeline. So you can see Dave's actually got a bit of a shortfall for January, for achieving his January target. In actual fact, I would, if I was Dave's manager, I'd probably be a little bit more concerned in actual fact, because we're looking here at the remaining pipeline for January. Remember, this is the pipeline that is due to close in January. We're looking at Dave's January target, and he's got a bunch of deals. In fact, he's got exactly a quarter of his pipeline is in negotiation, so that's good. But we've got some other values as well. In actual fact, he's got a third of his pipeline is still in the qualification stage. Almost a third of it is still in the prospecting stage. Now, depends on your sales cycle, doesn't it? But many of the customers we deal with, their sales cycle is, well, anything between 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, significantly longer in many cases. So I'd be questioning, I'd be saying, well, actually, Dave, you might have a bit more of a problem now than we thought. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do about that? Now, the companies that use this type of functionality to its maximum effect, they're using this information, I would say, they are using this information much more as a coach rather than a pundit. Do you know what I mean? When I watch the soccer or I watch sport, the pundits sit in the studio criticizing and so on and picking things apart, whereas the coach operates differently. The coach is guiding, he's explaining how to do things better, he's helping to retrieve a difficult situation perhaps. So companies that are using this effectively, they're using this as a coaching tool. We're just looking at one particular target here. But we can also see for January anyway, the win rate for this particular month. So we've got 2 lost opportunities and we've won 1 opportunity, which tells us the win rate by value and the win rate by count as well. So here are the opportunities. What some companies do is they go a step further and say, well, okay, for this month, what's my plan? Because the target is all very well, but what am I going to do to achieve that target? So your flexibility as to what these fields and this information should be. But this is Dave's plan for January. So what's he going to do? Well, I'm going to get 2 new customers. I'm going to work with some existing customers. I'm going to build some pipeline. What internal support do I need? So what do I need from other people within the company? Which accounts am I going to focus on? And this is something that a number of our customers do. They have a lessons learned at the end of the month. So it's part of that process of really continuous marginal gains, continuous improvement. This is a tool for saying, actually, with the benefit of hindsight, what would I have done differently? What did I learn from this month that will help me? And again, this information is used in coaching sessions and in personal development. So that's what it looks like from an individual target record. If we go to the dashboard, we've got that information summarized at the company level as well. So there's the total value of all the different salespeople combined together. That's how we are doing. So in actual fact, as a company, looks like we are scheduled to be ahead of target, providing we do bring in the deals that we are forecasting. And if I go down to the underlying report, I can see that information in a little bit more detail for January. I could expand the report and so on. And I've got the same information for next month. Of course, there's nothing in closed one for next month. We haven't got to next month yet, but again, you can see we've got a pretty reasonable weighted pipeline for February. So again, we're forecasting to be slightly ahead of target. And if I look at this quarter, then actually maybe I'm just building up. I should be reasonably confident of January and February, but do I have a problem building up for March? And maybe I could initiate some marketing activities now, or maybe we can do some pipeline generation work now that will have a benefit to me in March. And we can look at the same information by individual. So for example, if I go here, I can see the same information. I can analyze the information by individual people, and I can see that Andy actually has got a much more significant problem than Len. In fact, Len is really helping to achieve the target for this month. And the same information if we look at over the year, obviously we haven't got much pipeline for these future months. That may be okay if our sales cycle is relatively short. I've got information on win rates and so on. So that's another way of that's the third way of tracking performance against target, which is to either to use an app or to build it yourself. My view is that I believe, and certainly customers tell us, that it's easier for sales reps to use in the sense that there's actually nothing for them to do other than manage their opportunities, keep the close dates accurate and so on, manage the opportunities. But you should be doing that anyway and using reports and the dashboard charts and something like a target app to help you do that on a regular basis as well. Because the other thing, it gives more information about both the size and the quality of the pipeline in terms of the sales target for this month, next month, and so on. Because the downside is, yeah, sure, you're going to either need to build something or you're going to need to buy an app, and of course there's a fee associated with that. We charge $4,500 for our app as a one-off fee, so there's no recurring fee. It's just a one-off fee of $4,500, and we'll set it up for you and so on. So that's the third way of tracking targets, target and quota in Salesforce. Ben, do we have any questions on that?
Yes, we do. We actually have quite a few questions for this. Okay. The first one isn't actually relating to the Targets app, but someone has just asked if we're recording this and making it available, which we obviously are.
Yes.
So that's going to be live, hopefully by the end of tomorrow. So I'm going to aim to get that published on YouTube, and we're going to send out an email to everyone. So you can look out for that if you want to go through anything or feel like you've missed something and want to go back. That'll be there. The second question that was asked, someone was interested in knowing if the sales metrics, are they out of the box, or is this an additional custom build, the ones that you were displaying?
Was it? If you're referring to these metrics here that you can see on the screen now, perhaps the person who just asked the question could just confirm that this is what they're referring to. So what you're looking at here is our app for tracking sales against targets. So all of these metrics, they are out of the box in the sense that they're part of the app. The dashboard as well is part of the app, as well as these inline charts and these metrics here and this functionality of associating the opportunities to the relevant target. If we went to move one of these opportunities, then to the next month, then it would unhook itself from this target and link it to the February or whenever, March, whenever we moved it to target. So I'm not sure I think that's the answer to the question, Ben. Perhaps the person who asked that question could just confirm that is actually what they meant.
Well, they did drop another message saying exactly, so hopefully we covered everything.
Okay.
Someone else is interested. Someone's actually just dropped a message very recently saying, can you review how targets are created in your app? We track sales in several segments. Does your app support that?
It partly depends what you mean by segment. What I didn't show you, we have a Visualforce page for setting up the targets, so I can choose. I can go. I might have a lot of users, but I can define the people that should be quota carrying, which in this case are these three guys. And we have some Visualforce pages that help you go and set up the targets and so on. So we have some functionality around that for actually creating the target records. We have some customers for whom we have modified the app, perhaps because they have targets at the product level, or at least the product family level, and we've created targets for product family. If you have different, it depends what you mean by different segments. If you mean segment as industry segment, for example, then we have several ways to do that. The answer is yes, and there are several ways to do that, including another option for you might be, we're going to run a webinar in a couple of weeks' time about account management, but we have an account management app which allows you to create targets at the account level. And obviously your accounts are in different segments, so you can create a target at the account level. So for your key accounts, you have an account level target per month or per quarter or per year, whatever it is. And then you have a catch-all target as well for all of those accounts that don't warrant their own account plan or their own individual target. And we have some functionality that automatically links those opportunities to the relevant account plan. So the answer to that question, Ben, is yes, subject to
they've actually elaborated
how you define segment. Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt. Yeah, they've actually just in brackets, revenue divided into market segments that each carry different monthly targets. I don't know if that helps, or
Yes. It's well, if the person listening is interested, then kind of get in touch with us and we can have a further conversation about it. But yes, and it's just a question of understanding how you define segments. So fundamentally, you have an opportunity. And you may well have some products linked to that opportunity. It's just logically understanding which segments, what is a segment, whether is it an account or is a segment some other concept to which we need to link it to. So yes is the answer. That then subject to just kind of understanding what a segment is.
Yeah, sure. I've just replied to that message with our contact us form as well. So if the person listening wants to get in touch and have a further conversation, please do so, and we can definitely help you out. Okay, yeah, we have a few more. Can other opportunity fields be used instead of the amount? For example, can we track margin against target rather than amount?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you can use custom, instead of the amount field, yes, you can use custom fields to track the target, yes. And you can do it without modifying the code. So that's one of the features of the app is you however you define the target, if it is margin, for example, then yes, we have some people that do exactly that, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Another question, can a standard target figure and a stretch target figure be included on the page?
Interesting question. Yes. Yes, we have a few people that do that would have, we work with a consultancy called SBR, and they actually recommend 3 different targets. They're a sales management consultancy. They have what they call a pride target, which is kind of what I've just got to, what's the target I've got to hit to save face. They have, I can't remember what they call it now. The goal, not anyway, they have a top level target, a real sort of stretch target, and they have something in the middle of it that they call it a stretch target. So they actually have 3 different fields. So yes, you can have more than one target figure on it.
Okay. And kind of following on from that question, do you think they're a good idea, stretch targets?
Yes, because yes, I do, because let's say you've got a target in January of 10,000, and that, let's just say, equates for 2,500 a month, and you have a bad couple of first weeks or a good couple of first weeks, then it gives you your kind of minimum target is, well, okay, I'm not going to hit my stretch target, but at least I'm going to hit my pride target, or whatever you might want to call it. On the other hand, if there's a stake in the ground that says, yeah, to have done super well, this is the figure you need to have hit, then yes, I do think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Well, as a general.
Okay. Sure. And then there was a final question on here. What's the best way to track revenue over time against target, for example, project revenue?
For example, what was the last comment, Ben? For example,
project revenue.
Scheduled revenue. The way to do that, all of these targets are based on in this case, based on the amount field. So it's the total value of the deal. And in fact, all 3 methods that we looked at are based on the total value of the deal. But obviously, in many businesses, such as ours actually, or if you have a SaaS business or any business, a lot of manufacturing businesses, you might have a framework agreement, and the revenue comes to you over a period of time, and you want to track that revenue over time. So the way to do that is to use some sort of custom schedule. You can't really do it using the standard product schedules, because you just can't link those schedules to any sort of target. It's just impossible to get at the object of a standard revenue schedule. You can't do anything with it. The way to get around that, we do have an app that actually does that, allows you to schedule revenue over time in a straight line, or we have some large scale construction companies scheduling revenue in an S curve over time, and then they link that scheduled revenue in a very similar way. It's the schedules that get linked to these target records rather than the total opportunity value. So you need to schedule the revenue, and then you need to link those schedules to a target app. We can help you do that if that's something you need to do.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was all the questions.
Okay.
All the questions, yes.
Well, I'm nearly finished. Just really 2 other things. We have got this webinar is part of a series of webinars that we're running in January and February. We're really keen to help people kickstart their Salesforce benefits in 2018. So the topic we'll be covering in a fortnight's time is pipeline visibility. So how you measure the size, the trend, the quality of the pipeline. And we're going to be looking at some ways and dashboard charts and reports and some sales metrics to do that. And then the week on the 7th, February the 7th, we're going to talk about account management, key account management, so key account planning and targets in relation to key account planning. And then finally, we're going to cover this whole subject of user adoption. We have a very specific user adoption framework that we use. User adoption is not just something you can just do randomly to increase. You have to take a structured approach. We have a framework and a structure to do that. So we will talk about that as well. So register for those webinars. If you haven't already done so, you probably got an email last Thursday, I think, Ben, but we'll put it on our blog post as well, a link to the landing pages for each of those upcoming webinars. So thank you very much indeed for joining us, Ben. Thanks for your help. Appreciate the hard work you do in setting all of this kind of stuff up. I've just got to sit here and talk. So thank you.
No problem.
And thanks to everybody who joined us. If you do want to speak to us afterwards, then please don't hesitate to get in touch via our website or drop me an email. But thanks very much indeed. Have a good day. Thank you.